Confederacy pre-battle army Lee and his army in high spirits after Chancellorsville. They want to lead the army north for a second campaign. They want to collect supplies and take the war from Virginia. They believe that if they threaten the northern cities, they would weaken the Northern's appetite for war, and if they win major battle in northern soil, that would strengthen the peace movement. Maybe they would be able to get away as their own country, just like the United States did, or the 13 colonies did when they made themselves the United States. The Union's pre-battle, General Hooker, pushed by Lincoln to pursue Lee, relieved of command 3 days before battle. Major General George Meade's successor moves north, keeps army between Lee and D.C. He does not want D.C. to be taken. That is the capital of the United States and would be a huge negative. Lee hears Meade is in Pennsylvania and concentrates on Gettysburg. Battle Day 1. Meet north and west of town. As you guys can see the map on the right. Union Brig General Bufford slows Confederate advancement, allows Union infantry to arrive, but also allows for Confederate reinforcements to arrive. 30,000 Confederates and 20,000 Union meet. The Union falls back to Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill, south of town. This, of course, by doing that, they now have the high ground and can fight from a better point. You can see the hills. Battle Day 2. Union defends fishhook-shaped hills and ridges. These fishhook, you kind of have to have both sides so they cannot come around as easy. The south of town, 90,000 soldiers. Confederates wrap around Union troops. There's 70,000. Aftermath, Lee launches heavy assault on Union flank. Devil's Den, Little Round Top, Wheatfield, Peach Orchard, and Cemetery Ridge. All those places are on the right there. Union's right, full-scale assault on Culp's Hill and East Cemetery Hill. And then the Confederates gain ground, but Union defends, hold strong positions by nightfall. So here's some of the hills. Now you have to go, of course, travel up those hills, and if you're sitting at the top of the rocks, it's tough to scale those, so you got to go around those. Then Battle Day 3. Fighting resumes on Culp's Hill, cavalry battle east and south of town. Pickett's Charge, that was a famous charge where they continued to charge and continued to get casualties and more casualties as Pickett, the Southern general, charged. Dramatic infantry assault and 12,000 Confederates against Union center on Cemetery Ridge. That's at the top, the north there. They're repulsed by Union rifle and artillery fire and major losses to Confederate army. Had they won, this would have been a huge battle, but of course they did not. Casualties. They had 23,049 casualties by the Union. That was 3,155 killed, 14,529 wounded, 5,365 missing and captured. And then the Confederates had 3,903 killed, 18,735 wounded, 5,425 missing and captured, for a total of 28,063. One thing to note is that wounded typically ended up dying due to diseases. So if you had your arm amputated, you might have some sort of disease, especially if you were later in the day, because they, if you remember, did not sterilize their equipment. Post-battle, after Day 3, Confederates retreat back into Virginia. Lee blames himself. Major hit to Southern morale, and Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Vicksburg, May 18th to July 4th, 1863. Ulysses S. Grant against General John C. Pemberton. A total of 110,000 troops. There's 77,000 Union and 33,000 Confederates. Pre-battle, Union wants to gain control of strategic river fortress. Important because of local high above Mississippi River and direct attempts blocked by counter and moves terrain. So if you can get part of the Mississippi River, you can also keep the South from transporting some of their goods. New campaign. Late April 1863, Grant launches bold campaign against Pemberton. Surprise launch at Burnsburg, below Vicksburg. Move inland rapidly, push back threat of Johnson's forces near Jackson. Once this complete, turns attention to Vicksburg. Again, attention to Vicksburg brings more troops there, and Union victories weaken Pemberton's forces. No alternative but to retreat to Vicksburg. This is how you get the stage set up in Vicksburg. May 19th and 22nd, attack on Confederate strongholds, met with great losses. Grant decides to lay siege to the city, avoid further loss of life. Laying siege, they're going to go ahead and take all the food coming in or water or whatever that would be, and they're going to have them completely surrounded. Siege of Vicksburg lasts 47 days. That's why you see it so long on the original slide there. Soldiers and civilians both affected. Food, major issues even before siege. Confederate pilfering drained town of supplies, and that was before this happened. Civilians dug caves into hills of city and forced to eat rice, coffee from sweet potatoes, cowpea bread, and mule meat, as well as rats. Surrender. Grant first demanded unconditional surrender, later relented, offers parole to Pemberton and his army, allowing them to leave, but they do have to surrender. And then July 4th, 1863, surrender is finalized. Casualties. The Union had 4,910, where the Confederates, and a lot of this was missing and captured and starvation, was 32,492 total. Effects of the battle. Vicksburg, key to Confederacy, now in control of are in control by the Union. Mississippi River is now in the Union control. They cannot get their cotton to the Mississippi River and out to these other places to sell. And the fate of the Confederacy is sealed. This is the last major thing to kind of show the Union is going there. Lastly, Sherman's march to the sea, September to December 1864. The city of Atlanta, small population, important railroad and commercial cities, lots of supplies and links many other regions. The railroads would come in, they'd get supplies or drop them off and then take them some other place. So this is a huge hub. General William Tecumseh Sherman served with Ulysses S. Grant at Vicksburg, took over Grant's army when Grant was made commander of the entire army, and conquered Tennessee, and then moves his army towards Atlanta. Attacking Atlanta. Sherman lays siege to Atlanta for 4 months, and Confederates decide to evacuate the city, which was probably a good move to save lives, but not a good move to stay in the city. They burn all supplies and important buildings themselves to prevent the Union from getting them. This, of course, is a tactic that we've seen different places with Napoleon, and this scorched earth policy will come back to bite them when Sherman uses it against them. Union takes over Atlanta. Sherman moves his army into the city on September 2nd, orders all civilians to leave the city. Civilians are forced out, leaving most of their belongings behind, and army stays in the city for 2 months. Results: victory cut off supplies from a large region of the South, meaning that they are going to have a large drop in morale, and convinces many in the North that the war will be over soon. Helps Lincoln win re-election in 1864. Sherman leaves Atlanta. November 11th, Sherman orders everything of value in Atlanta except churches and hospitals to be destroyed. Behind us lay Atlanta, smoldering and in ruins, the black smoke rising high in air and hanging like a pall over the ruined city. General Sherman. They still have things in Atlanta today that show this area, and they still do not like Sherman to this day. Army marches to Savannah. Army moves out of Atlanta on a 300-mile march heading towards the coastal city of Savannah. Sherman makes his army move extremely fast without supplies. They live off the land, taking/stealing supplies from towns and farmers, and they also destroy things as they go. Total war and scorched earth. The total war, when an army targets everything that the enemy uses to make war, not just targeting the enemy. That means that they take food, they take everything. Enemies, civilians, and soldiers were viewed as the same thing. Now, they didn't kill them, but they went through and took their food, destroyed anything that the enemy could value: food, shelter, transportation, communication, and factories. Sherman's scorched earth policy: as an army marched in, it destroyed everything they find, burned farmland, kill animals, bend railroad, tie them around trees. They figured they would punish the South and break their will to fight, and shows the South, if you keep fighting, you'll literally lose everything. Controversy. Now, the question I have for you at the end of this: is it right to target or punish civilians? Is it worth risking the army by traveling without supplies? Now, of course, we have our southern reaction. Civilians are scared of the advancing army. Many flee towns before the army gets there. Some destroy their own belongings rather than have the Union take them. And then Sherman reaches Savannah. Confederate army of 10,000 defending Savannah. Sherman attacks a fort to get more cannons to siege the city. Confederate army decides to retreat rather than fight. Sherman takes over Savannah on December 20th, 1864. Moving north. After capturing Savannah, Sherman turns his army north to continue the march into South Carolina and North Carolina. He wants to link up with Grant's army in Virginia and then attack Lee. They continue the march until March 19th, 1865. But I want to put you back to the controversy. These questions will be posted in Google Classroom, and I'll actually have you guys answer the questions and then comment on your neighbors' questions as well.